Gunfights. You love them. I love them. Let's be honest, who doesn't love a good movie gunfight? And that's why I asked you to tell me your favorite movie gunfights. That's right, people. I held a gun to your head on my social media and asked you what your favorite movie gunfights of all time were, and you came back with a bunch of pretty good responses. So today we're doing a special top 10 list, your 5 favorite gunfights and my 5 favorite gunfights or gunfight movies of all time. So with all that being said, let's lock and load, baby. So we're going to start this list out with viewer submissions. These are the ones that my followers went on social media and voted on. Number 5 is Young Guns 2. Now, when I asked people to submit their votes on their favorite movies, I also asked them why these are their favorite gunfight movies. And the overwhelming response for Young Guns was the fact that the characters are so likable, you really don't want to see them go. You never know who's going to get shot, so you're always on edge. They like the gunfights, they like the sense of humor. So obviously this choice was more about the style and the narrative, but that's okay because they are great movies. They're a lot of fun and they do have some pretty great shootouts, a lot of memorable moments. It's a pretty good choice. Heat actually made number 4. I thought it would place a lot higher on the viewer lists because of the accurate depictions of gunfights. You've got tactical reloads. You've got that great audio on the set that they captured. They actually went in and tried to do a bunch of sound design afterwards, but realized that the sound of the actual gunfight was so much better. All of the actors in the movie went through intensive weapons training, and it really shows. As a matter of fact, when I was in the military, they used to show clips of this movie, and they would show Val Kilmer's famous tactical reload and say, if you can't reload as good as or better than this actor, you don't deserve to be in the military. And it doesn't hurt that the famous SAS operator and author Andy McNabb was the on-set tactical consultant. You had to know that The Matrix was going to be on this list somewhere. No movie has given us such a true-to-life anime adaptation as The Matrix has when it comes to the gunfights. The Matrix is an original IP, but it took a lot of inspiration from movies like Ghost in the Shell, especially in the lobby shootout, which really echoes Major Kusanagi's shootout against the tank at the end of Ghost in the Shell Part 1. And of course, all of the actors went through intensive weapons, stunt, and fight training, and it gave us a classic film that has had its stylish choices copied over and over since its release, and it really has not been outshone yet. But with a sequel on the way, with Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves set to return, and the Wachowskis behind the camera again, it just might finally be beaten. Now, I love Shoot 'em Up, but I was actually pretty surprised that it was voted so high by the viewers. Every single shootout in this movie is extremely clever and fun. It's very tongue-in-cheek. I mean, you have a skydiving shootout, for God's sakes, and the only time I've ever seen that was in the game No One Lives Forever. Not to mention the amazing shootout in this movie that happens while the main character is having sex. While he's having sex, he never stops shooting people, and it's pretty damn amazing. Now, it's no surprise that John Wick was the number 1 choice by my followers on social media. Not only did Keanu Reeves train his butt off for months and months and months before each film with one of the best 3-gun shooters in the world, he also took even more combat training than he already had. The movie is directed by actual stuntmen, so they do a lot of scenes that most movies would not be able to pull off because they know what they're actually shooting because they've done it themselves. Whether it was the surprise shootout in John Wick's house that really blew people's minds and let them know that John Wick was a badass, or the gunfights in the sequel which really took it up a notch because they were given a bigger budget than they had on the first one, or of course the organized chaos of all of the shootouts and the fights in Part 3. This trilogy, which is soon to be a 4-part franchise, has some of the best world building that you'll ever see, in addition to its amazing gun combat. Now for my top 5. Now, they aren't in any particular order with the exception of number 1. That definitely deserves to be in the spot that it is. Now for my choices, I didn't necessarily go with what was stylish. I went with what was more realistic. And that's why I chose Act of Valor for my number 5. Now, it is kind of cheating because all of the people in the movie are actual Navy SEAL operators. So of course, they're going to be tactically sound, they're going to be amazing with their weapons, but I just love the authenticity of the film. I love how realistic it is, I love how gritty the shots are, the use of GoPros. I love the fact that it's actual military members Not just the SEALs, but everybody involved were real military, and it was filmed in my area where I live in Florida. There are really great tense moments like the infiltration and rescue of a hostage, and there are super exciting moments like when they have to exfil and get that hostage out of the area safe. As badass as Navy SEALs are, they are not invincible, and this movie really shows that. Anybody can have bad luck no matter how skilled you are. And that's demonstrated with real consequences, injuries, and death throughout the film. If you haven't seen it, definitely give it a chance. Now my number 4 and number 3 choices are going to seem a little redundant, but they each have unique qualities. And I'm going to go into that here now. So number 4 is Lone Survivor, which again is based off of a true story. Now this time it's not actual special operators in the movie, it's actors. But these actors actually trained really hard with the military. They look and they sound and they just feel like real operators. Everything from muzzle to trigger discipline to movement to how they cover each other is all on point. There's no CGI blood, this is actual practical effects. It just adds so much more authenticity to the gunfights. Like an act of valor, the gunfights are great, but they use CGI blood, and as soon as you see it, you know it's fake and it sticks out in your mind and it takes you out of that gunfight a little bit. Number 3 on my list is Black Hawk Down. Yes, the first 2 choices on my list were also military films, but I chose this one because, again, this is a true story. I've read several books, articles, seen all the documentaries, anything that you can imagine about what happened in Somalia, and this movie follows them to the letter. It doesn't romanticize, it doesn't make things look sexy, it's very gritty. It shows the sacrifices that people made. Now when Sugarheart and Gordon made their final stand at the chopper trying to protect Michael Durant, they knew they probably weren't going to make it. They were hoping they would. They were just trying to keep these people off as long as they could so they can get some cover and some protection from the other troops, but they were cut off. They ended up dying and they got medals of honor for their sacrifice. So not only do they tell their story, but they tell the story of so many others on this mission, and they do it very realistically. Especially when you have to follow rules of engagement and the rest of the population does not. My number 2 is Collateral, a Michael Mann film. Now everybody knows how much of a stickler Michael Mann is for realism in every aspect of his movies, and that's why once again he brought in Andy McNabb of the SAS to work with Tom Cruise to really have him go all in and become an assassin. That's why every single movement, stance, reload, Mozambique drill, and everything that you can think of in this movie done by Tom Cruise is spot on. When you take a world-class operator and you pair him with one of the best stunt actors in the business who was OCD about how good his characters are at what they do, to the point where he learns to fly choppers, jet fighters, and everything else, you know your results are going to be fantastic. This movie is dark, it's gritty, it's violent, it's unapologetic, and I definitely recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it. Now, like I said, the first 4 movies on this list weren't necessarily in chronological order. This one, though, is for sure my number 1 movie gunfight of all time. These guys had military advisors. They really train on these weapons for weeks and weeks and weeks. I think this is the best gunfight ever made because it is geographically sound. All of the tactics are spot on, whether it's how they move, the way they communicate, the way that they reload. Nothing in this movie is amiss. And every single bullet, every single time they need to reload, they reload how they would in the real world. And every time somebody shoots, they show the impact of that bullet. So there is nothing wasted in this film. Whether it's the great sniping scene at the hotel or this final shootout, which is also where the final shootout for Butch and Sundance happened. Ryan Phillippe and Benicio del Toro look like real gunfighters. They look like actual operators who were in the military before they became criminals. This is the first film that Chris McQuarrie directed, the guy who's behind all of the latest and greatest Mission Impossible movies. He made this movie. It is very slept on, it's very underrated, it's very underappreciated, and a lot of people don't have it on their top 10 lists for most things. This is one of my top 10 crime movies, and it is my number 1 gunfight movie of all time. So that was yours and my 5 favorite gunfights combined to create the mightiest top 10 list of gunfights on all of YouTube. Okay, maybe not all of YouTube, but it's definitely the top 10 gunfight list on my channel. It is the only one, but it's definitely the best one. So if myself or my social media followers missed a gunfight that you guys thought deserved to be on the top 10 list, let me know in the comment section below. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.